David Bradley, thank you so much for bringing me to your favourite bar, the NBC Sports Bar in Orlando.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, welcome. The reason why we're here is that as a family, we go to Orlando every other year. Not necessarily to go to the parks, the kids have grown up now, but they still come for a holiday. And this year we were actually in that very bar watching the first NFL match of the season, Kansas City Chiefs versus the Detroit Lions. And that was on a Thursday evening. Okay, and we were literally sat at the table right behind your left-hand shoulder, and we were there Thursday. We were looking at the game. Now, prior to going on holiday, my son, it was his 18th birthday, and we all support Kansas City Chiefs. So, as his birthday present, what we did on Saturday was that we left Orlando, we flew out to Kansas City, and we had a tour of the stadium, Arrowhead Stadium, the NFL, and then we flew back that evening, and that was his 18th birthday present. So, yeah, as I say, that's very close to my heart. That bar behind you.
So not being a huge NFL supporter, how, and maybe you can answer this quickly, how does a man like yourself end up a big supporter of the sport?
Basically, we've been going to America for many, many years on holiday. I previously, in a previous life, I worked for American companies and was out in America when I first started work every year. And just got into the sport. And people, either love it or hate it, I suppose. We love it. You see it more and more in the UK now. You've got Kansas City coming over next week to Frankfurt. And so they're playing in Europe next weekend. So yeah, as I say, it's great.
Isn't it funny what you've just said as well? And maybe it's a moment to reflect. You either love it or hate it. It's because probably you don't understand it. It's so
Correct.
true of all sport. Believe it or not, I played cricket when I was a young fella. And you say that to people and you go, huh? You play cricket? It's a great sport. It's a great sport. Why?
Yeah.
Because if you can avoid, not only hit a ball, but if you can avoid a guy throwing a brick at you at 68 to 70 miles an hour, it's skillful. So I think that difference sometimes is all that is needed to acknowledge that it's a sport.
Exactly.
So the Kansas City Chiefs, my goodness. So that's a question that we have to ask. How do you end up supporting them?
Basically, because my lad started supporting them, we were watching it on the telly, and we got more involved with it. So he's watched it for many years, and I suppose it's like any of us. You support your favourite football team. That's actually come when we were children, and they were the top of the league. Me with Liverpool in Bob Paisley era, and all that. So Kansas City Chiefs have won the Super Bowl 3 times. They won the Super Bowl last year. So we just got into it, and it's just great, great to go. And so I'd love to go and see a real match. That's one thing we couldn't do is on that Thursday night where we were sat in the bar here. We couldn't get tickets to actually go to the actual match, so we went to the stadium tour on Saturday. But yet to go to Tottenham or Wembley and see a match over here in the UK.
So there you go. So you've already taught me something, but teach me something else that you've learned in the last 24, 48 hours.
Well, I would say more than 24, 48 hours. But what we've learned over the last maybe 6 months is the boom that's coming with regards to AI, artificial intelligence and machine learning. This is a fundamental change of design, a fundamental change in way people are thinking about data centers, a fundamental change on the kilowatt loading per rack. And therefore the net effect on power and cooling within the data center. I'll give you for instance. Okay, I've got a little note here that Apple this year have brought out the M1 processor, which basically is 5 times faster on the CPU. So that's the central processing unit. 6 times faster on the GPU, the graphics processing unit. 18 times faster for machine learning, and twice the battery life. Now, that is all using the same amount of power. It's using the same amount of electricity. Yes. But what you'll find is that what it's drawing per rack will go up. So what you've got now is that potentially for the same amount of power going into that white space, into that data hall, you'd have potentially less racks because of the fact that you've got higher density per rack, higher kilowatts per rack. So you have that design challenge on how do I furnish the whole white space that I'm trying to deploy? How do I design for high density and low density? Because I might have traditional CPU processors going in, and therefore, the kilowatt per rack, I've got 100 kilowatts, maybe 200 kilowatts, maybe 50 kilowatts, and traditional 5 to 10 kilowatts. And how do you manage all that? So, so it's such an exciting time at the moment with regards to what's coming down the road. Working with the consultants on the design and listening to the customers on what they want and where it's moving. So yeah, no, I think it's exciting times.
Even the language, David, is so encouraging to hear people who are in the center business talking more about the data and how that data, which ultimately is the magic, is changing not only the data in our digital infrastructure industry itself, but society. There's not a thing you can do today, not a thing really, that doesn't require digital infrastructure. And I loved what you said there a moment ago. And Emma Fryer, who you may or may not know, used to
I know
say,
Emma.
yeah, Emma used to say often, this Moore's Law thing and all this exponential growth. Do you know that if the aviation industry had kept repeating the efficiencies on fuel, aviation fuel, at the same level as Moore's Law, you'd be able to fly across the Atlantic on a teaspoonful of aviation fuel.
Oh, yeah.
It's interesting, right? Because we often see, oh, it's getting bigger, it's getting more ferocious, it's using too much. And yet, just to keep track, if we were doing it the same way today as we did 10 years ago, you'd have 50 times more electricity being used, probably.
Agreed.
So it's extraordinary to see the change and that dynamic, and I'm sure you're at the forefront of that, where you're more a teacher than you are anything else, because we are part of the change maker group.
Yeah, and recently, I mean, I was at the Data Center Alliance 10 by 10. This was a couple of months ago, and I was co-speaking with Colin Shorten of JOL, who's the director of data centers for JOL, and it was specifically on AI and what's changing, what's coming down the road, and what changes are. And we'll be most probably presenting again in January on what's coming down, what the changes are, and it will just keep progressing. And it's basically it's a boom we're on. It's an exponential curve where we're just at the beginning of. And I think we're in a fantastic industry, being the data center industry.
Here's an interesting thing. Just when we were talking there's a new feature in Zoom, which we're recording on, that I must disable. It's an AI feature that if you raise your hand or you're gesticulating, it actually puts a little hand up, or if you put a thumb. And so I'm just being told, seeing as you've just been speaking, we reckon that you've had the attention of the other speakers. So there you go. You've got to be careful now what you do. So the world has changed immeasurably. We've talked about that slightly about with data and digital and AI and infrastructure and stuff. And how do you continue to stay motivated?
Okay, well, the basis of this is basically to listen to the customers, right? Listen to the consultants. Listen to where people want to be with regards to their growth, or where they want to be against their competitors, because it's only then what you have to do with regards to addressing that design. And that's what keeps me motivated, is actually working with the end users. It's essentially, it's quite interesting, because you see a lot of the consultants going to work for the hyperscalers and going to work for the colo as the engineering team. So where you were dealing with the same people, okay, as a consultant, they're now working for the end user, and then they're going back then working with the consultant. So it's interesting. It's a full, it's a closed cycle of people, and we find that our industry is very incestuous. It's always the same people. We all know each other, and it's a lot of it comes down to relationships. A lot of it is relationships, and we've known each other for many years. You and me have known each other for many years, and a lot of it is relationships. And we're all the same people. If we work for different companies, we work for different companies, but we're all the same people, and that knowledge base is out there. So it's just working with the people, working with the designs, listening to what is required. And you think it's a hard task, but if you keep concentrating on the end goal, the hurdles you have to cover, get simpler. And also you learn by doing. You learn by experience. you know, and Colin Shorten is testament to that, with regards to the work he's doing. And, I was co-speaking with him, and it's interesting talking to him from his perspective on what they're working on and what they're doing, and how they're looking at the design for the future. So yeah, no, it's very, very interesting. That's what keeps you motivated.
Well, I guess there's so much in that what you've said, and so many simplistic terms that we don't listen enough to when we're younger, such as my first mentor, I remember saying, Garry, 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 and you're in trouble when you get your name repeated 3 times, don't you? You've 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use it in that proportion. And you go, yeah, you're so right. The other is, and I liked what you said about, experience. What is it? What is experience? It's usually an aggregation of all the mistakes that you've made over the years.
Yeah, quite agree.
And you put a label on it. Now, the key there, if I was listening, and I was listening as a 20-year-old or 23-year-old, is I'd like to learn from other people's mistakes so I don't make those same ones again. Sometimes that's the hard one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough one, David, because we all want to be the first, or we all want to. But if you can actually just stop for a second, listen to a podcast, read a book, maybe learn about mistakes, then at least the ones you make are different.
And I find that, people know that I'm an advocate for LinkedIn. Yeah, I'm always on LinkedIn. I'm doing posts and what have you. But I use it as an education medium. Yeah. Of what's going on and what's coming down the road and what events and what have you. And I urge people to use LinkedIn because, it is a great medium. And it actually does show, what businesses are thinking about, where they're looking, and what they're doing. And it gives me a great, knowledge base of reconnaissance, and that's why I'm on it, and also a presence. So people come up to me and say, "David, I know you." And I go, "Do you?" I don't know them, and they go, "Yeah, from LinkedIn," and you become a sort of a known face, as it were, in the industry, which is great. And as I say, I urge people to use LinkedIn.
Insights, I like that. It gives you great insights, and again, we all have to move with the times, etc., etc. But you used to know a lot about the industry, what was going out about your own funnel, whereas now you can widen your funnel and you can see not only in your own territory, not only in your own lane, but very broad geographically, very broad where your bit fits into the overall. And as you've said, and you've articulated in this, it's all about being useful. How can you be useful to the person you're talking to? And if you could be useful for the person you're talking to by bringing them knowledge from somewhere else that somebody else has told you, then we'll get to the bit about the sort of what do you do exactly and where do you fit in, but if you bring them along in the story. So it's been short and sharp, David.
Yeah.
We've been to Florida. We've been nearly to Frankfurt. We've nearly been to an NFL match. You mentioned Spurs, which is okay.
Yeah. Okay.
As an Arsenal follower, I'll let you away with that. It's you're being interviewed. That's your call. Well, thank you so much for your time, David.
Okay, Garry.
And congratulations, and thank you for joining Hosting Ireland very recently.
Okay, thank you, Garry. See you soon.
See you later.
All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye.